What happens when one of Britain's most outspoken farmers believes the people shaping the future of British agriculture don't truly understand what happens on a real farm? For years, Jeremy Clarkson has built a reputation for saying exactly what's on his mind. He transformed a struggling farm into one of Britain's most talked about agricultural success stories, invested millions into British farming, and made beef a major part of his business. Now, a growing debate surrounding King Charles's vision for the future of farming has reignited tensions, and Clarkson isn't staying quiet. He believes the direction Britain is heading could pile even more pressure on traditional cattle farmers, including those trying to keep British beef alive. So why is Clarkson speaking out now, and why are so many farmers saying they're being pushed to breaking point? Let's get into it. If you've watched Clarkson's farm, you'll know Jeremy Clarkson has learned the hard way that farming isn't some peaceful countryside hobby. It's relentless. One year it's flooding, the next it's drought, followed by soaring fuel prices, expensive machinery, labor shortages, endless paperwork, and regulations that seem to multiply every season. Despite all of that, Clarkson has continued investing in British agriculture and expanding his livestock operation. He believes beef farming isn't just another business. It's part of Britain's identity, part of the countryside, and part of what has fed the country for generations. That's why the latest conversation around agriculture has his full attention. King Charles has spent decades championing environmental sustainability. Long before becoming king, he promoted organic farming, biodiversity, reducing emissions, and encouraging more environmentally friendly food production. Many people admire that vision, but others, especially Britain's livestock farmers, aren't so convinced. Across Britain and much of Europe, governments and environmental organizations have increasingly focused on cutting emissions from agriculture, with cattle becoming one of the biggest targets. Because cows produce methane, many experts argue that reducing cattle numbers is necessary if climate goals are going to be achieved. From a farmer's perspective, though, that's a frightening conversation. Less support for livestock, more environmental restrictions, higher costs, and greater uncertainty all add to the pressure. For many beef producers, it feels like they're constantly being asked to produce more while earning less. Clarkson has repeatedly argued that too many decisions affecting farmers are being made by people who've never spent a single winter trying to keep livestock alive. His point is simple. It's easy to make policy from an office, but it's much harder when your livelihood depends on the weather, your animals, and razor-thin profit margins. This isn't the first time Clarkson has criticized the direction of farming policy. Whether in newspaper columns, interviews, or on television, he's consistently questioned whether Britain is slowly making farming impossible for ordinary people. Every year seems to bring another rule, another cost, and another hurdle. Clarkson often reminds viewers that while he has television income, thousands of family farms don't. Many are already struggling to survive. Some have been in the same family for generations, while others are wondering whether they'll still exist 5 years from now. That's why any proposal that could make livestock farming even more difficult immediately grabs attention across the farming community. Now, let's be clear. King Charles has never personally targeted Jeremy Clarkson or publicly threatened his beef business. The debate is much broader than that. It centers on environmental priorities, agricultural policy, and the future of food production in Britain. But perception matters, and many farmers believe the overall direction of travel is making traditional cattle farming increasingly difficult. Clarkson has become one of the loudest voices expressing those concerns. He keeps asking a question that doesn't have an easy answer. If Britain keeps making livestock farming less profitable, who will produce Britain's food? Will supermarkets simply import more beef from countries with lower standards? And if that happens, have emissions actually been reduced, or simply exported somewhere else while British farmers disappear? That's where the debate becomes far more complicated. What makes this story even more interesting is that Jeremy Clarkson was never expected to become one of Britain's biggest defenders of farming. Most people knew him as the outspoken presenter who loved fast cars and controversial opinions. Few imagined he'd end up becoming one of the country's most influential voices for agriculture. Yet, that's exactly what's happened. Millions of people who had never thought about farming suddenly found themselves watching failed harvests, broken tractors, sick animals, impossible regulations, and the daily struggles of keeping a farm alive. Whether people agree with Clarkson or not, he has done something very few public figures have managed to do. He's made millions of people actually care about British farming. Supporters say he's standing up for farmers who feel ignored by politicians and policymakers. Critics argue he oversimplifies an incredibly complex issue. After all, climate change is real, and agriculture does contribute to emissions. But farming also feeds the country. So where should the balance be? How do you protect the environment without making food production so difficult that British farmers simply give up? Should Britain produce more of its own food or become increasingly dependent on imports? That's the question dividing opinions across the country, and it isn't going away anytime soon. Meanwhile, Clarkson seems determined to keep fighting for British farming. He continues promoting local food, supporting British beef, and encouraging people to understand what farmers actually face every single year. Whether that changes, future policy remains to be seen. But whenever Jeremy Clarkson believes farming is under pressure, he rarely keeps his opinions to himself. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to subscribe for more stories on Jeremy Clarkson, the royal family, and the biggest issues shaping Britain's future. I'll see you in the next one.